I was never one of those who enjoyed being shot at. There are nutters out there, but particularly photojournalists, who actually enjoy the experience. But I do sympathize with Winston Churchill, who was one of us, and he said he said something about the exhilaration of being shot at without result. And at the end of the day, you think, wow, I've come through. And we used to do this. We did it in Sarajevo at the end of a particularly rough day. You'd uncork a bottle of something, and there was a real feeling of exhilaration, and survival itself becomes almost an achievement. I think one of the problems with journalists is they get too full of themselves. They want fancy titles. It's not enough to be a reporter. You want to be a correspondent. Well, I'll tell you one of the dirty secrets of journalism. A correspondent is a reporter who has lunch. And then from being a correspondent, they want to be an editor or a world affairs editor. Well, I think the same thing applies in business. There's nothing that actually matters at the end of the day when you've run your course and had your career. Not money, not prizes, not fancy titles, but the good opinion of those who work with you, and especially the good opinion of those who work against you. And if you've got that, you've got everything. I'm taking you down a little bit of a byway now. I hope there are no press here, because there are some, not all journalism is as honest as I would have wished it to be. I know cases, isolated cases, of television news reports which have been falsified for one reason or another. And I'm naming no names, but if I write another book, beyond the book of verses, and I need a very good lawyer to do it, I might write about these. So here's another bit of PowerPoint. It's called Bad News. I've seen it on the news, and so it's true. The camera, of course, will tell no lies. Dear trusting friend and dupe, if you but knew what I have learned, you might think otherwise. The sort of people whom the trade attracts are those who think that they can best succeed at the expense of others and don't need to pay too much attention to the facts. I'd say look carefully before crediting the authenticity of what you see. A multitude of sins lies in the editing. Is the reporter where he claims to be? I know a man of doubtful honesty whose practice was to stage some brave foray shot in a peaceful suburb of Grozny. The actual war was several miles away. It is an issue worth attending to, the incidence of electronic sleaze. The fraudsters may be relatively few. We used to say the same of our MPs. Now here we get into the issue of reputation, which certainly affects all your businesses. It affects television network, it affects everybody, because it's not an add-on. It's not like wire wheels or a sunroof. It is the beating heart of the engine. Some years ago, I was invited to address an away day, not by the London Speaker Bureau, unfortunately. I don't know why they lost out, but it was one of the big 5 accountancy companies. And anyone who thinks that accountants are boring people should have seen how they partied the night away. I've never seen a bigger bunch of hooligans outside a war zone. Lovely people, but by the time I got to do it, there were only 4 big accountancy companies. One of them, Arthur Andersen, had collapsed on an issue of reputation. So that's why I think, we have to pay attention to this even more in the hard times than the good times. And something else the hard times do, you've got to laugh or you cry, so some of the times you laugh. I'll give you a couple of examples. I'll give you one again from the Bosnian War. I only got back from Bosnia last week, and I've got to go out again in March or April to give evidence in the trial of Radovan Karadzic, the former Bosnian Serb leader. Now, I worked on and off in Bosnia for 3.5 years of the war, and we had a creative relationship with Karadzic. He was actually quite approachable for the first 2 years of the war. But his daughter Sonia ran the Serbs' Foreign Press Bureau, and for 20 Deutschmarks a day, she would tell you whom you were not allowed to interview and where you were not allowed to go. We found her deeply unattractive in every possible way, and so we came up with a golden fish story. It goes like this: the international community was trying to impose a peace map on the Serbs, and Karadzic got so fed up that he went to the river, taking the map with him, and beside on the bank of the river he caught a golden fish with magical properties. And the fish said, if you put me back into the river, I will grant you any wish that you have. And Dr. Karadzic said, that's good, then you can make this map acceptable to my people. And the fish said, I'm sorry, I should have told you, I don't do maps. Is there anything else I can do for you? Yes, said Dr. Karadzic, you can make my daughter Sonia the most beautiful girl in the whole of the Balkans. And the fish said, I think I'll have another look at that map. Now, it is the same with our esteemed honourable members. I wouldn't do anything so crude as to promote it, but I will mention in passing that I happen to write a book about the MP's expenses scandal, which I happen to have with me. And it's tragic in a way, and it's deeply embarrassing that more than half our total members of Parliament claimed money that they should not have claimed, which is not such a very long distance from concluding that more than half of them were crooks. And there were the mole traps and the bell tower. But my favourite one involves John Gummer, MP. Decent guy. John Gummer represents the constituency of Suffolk Coastal. I come from Suffolk. This is the tie of the Suffolk Regiment. So I take a deep interest in its politics. And I recommended to the political editor of the East Anglian Daily Times that he should write a piece about the importance of moles in the politics of the county of Suffolk. This is because John Gummer had charged the Fees Office for the eradication of garden pests, including moles. So we'll come to the point here. It's another little bit of political PowerPoint. This one is called Mole Traps. John Gummer MP's undisputed role is that of a Conservative grandee. He's also known, unreasonably perhaps, for garden pests, for moles and for mole traps. So Suffolk people find it rather neat and even democratically droll that his son Ben is trying to unseat the MP for Ipswich, who is Mr. Mole. The MP for Ipswich is actually called Chris Mole. You know, you couldn't make it up. I think I feel so strongly about the MP's expenses scandal because, well, I was myself an MP for only 4 years, and I was elected on an issue of public trust in public life. Just think where we are now. They were looking for somebody outside party politics to take on a guy called Neil Hamilton. Well, I knew a little bit about Neil. Nobody ever told me about Christine, but I found out about Christine soon enough. And everybody said, as an outsider, I was absolutely going to lose, and I was expecting to lose. And I was rather astonished when I won. And people are now saying, well, did you know what was going on? And actually, I have to say, I didn't. I think it got worse after the dismissal of Elizabeth Filkin, the second Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards.